The United States just executed the most brutal corporate liquidation in basketball history, and it wasn't even close. 101-46. Let that number burn into your brain for a second. That's not a basketball game. That's a hostile takeover broadcast live to the entire world, and the message was crystal clear. The old guard is officially dead.
Zealand finally in the starting lineup. It took long enough. It took long enough. Stephanie White, I know your skin was crawling when you saw her in the starting lineup. I know you didn't like that. Caitlin Clark led Team USA.
What you witnessed wasn't some feel-good international exhibition where everyone gets participation trophies and handshakes. This was a systematic dismantling designed to send shockwaves through every basketball federation on the planet. A 55-point margin of victory doesn't happen by accident. It happens when you finally unleash a generational weapon that the establishment has been desperately trying to keep locked away in a cage. For months, the gatekeepers of USA basketball and the WNBA power structure have been playing the most dangerous game imaginable. They've been protecting their precious legacy hierarchy, while the most valuable asset in the sport was sitting on the bench, watching inferior players get handed starting spots based on seniority instead of production. But here's the thing about trying to suppress a supernova. Eventually, the pressure becomes so intense that the explosion is absolutely devastating. And that explosion just vaporized New Zealand's entire basketball program on live television.
Second group, they absolutely, like, that second group went off. I'm not even gonna lie to y'all. Chelsea Gray still starting. I don't know why. Chelsea Gray does not need to be a starter.
The exact moment Caitlin Clark's name hit that starting lineup card, the entire economic reality of women's basketball shifted permanently. You want to understand what happens when you take the most disruptive force the sport has ever seen and surround her with elite assassins. You get mathematical impossibility. You get 101 points that left an entire country questioning whether they should even bother funding their national team anymore. Clark didn't just play 23 minutes. She operated like a CEO taking over a failing Fortune 500 company, completely dictating every single possession with surgical precision. 14 points and 6 assists barely scratched the surface of what actually happened out there. She didn't just score. She systematically broke the psychological will of 5 grown women who thought they could compete at this level.
She do it all. She literally, Caitlin Clark has added to her bag. I don't know if y'all know, Caitlin Clark has added to her bag. It's about to get spooky. It's about to get so spooky for these WNBA.
But here's where it gets absolutely terrifying for every other team watching. Clark has been quietly adding weapons to her arsenal while everyone else was busy making podcasts and posting workout videos. Remember when teams thought they could contain her by dropping coverage and daring her to beat them from mid-range? That strategy just got permanently deleted from every scouting report on Earth. She's now pulling up from 15 feet with the same cold-blooded efficiency she used to reserve for logo threes. When a player who already commands panic-level attention at 35 feet suddenly proves she can dissect your defense from anywhere on the court, she doesn't just become great. She becomes mathematically unguardable. And that's a nightmare scenario for every defensive coordinator currently employed in professional basketball.
Are going to be there. You know what I'm saying? This is why they need to start her. Forget all that seniority stuff and all that. This is the best point guard in the world. Why are we starting anybody else? It doesn't even make sense.
Now let's talk about the corporate merger happening in that backcourt. Because what Clark and Paige Buchers are building together isn't just good basketball. It's a monopolistic enterprise designed to bankrupt the competition and eliminate any hope of competitive balance. Buchers logged 24 minutes of pure operational brilliance, seamlessly blending her supercomputer processing speed with Clark's kinetic vision. When you put 2 basketball minds operating at that frequency on the same floor simultaneously, it stops being a fair competition. It becomes a rigged market. They're not just running plays. They're executing high-frequency trading algorithms that identify defensive weaknesses and exploit them in milliseconds. Buchers' 7 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists don't tell the real story. She was the chief operating officer to Clark's CEO, ensuring every single possession was executed with 0 wasted energy. Here's what the establishment doesn't want you to understand about what's really happening. This massacre exposed the brutal truth about seniority in elite sports, and it's making some very powerful people extremely uncomfortable. Seniority is a toxic corporate metric designed to protect legacy employees who can no longer justify their market value through actual production. When Clark runs the offense, the basketball moves like lightning, instantly punishing every defensive mistake with ruthless efficiency. When the old guard touches the floor, everything slows down to predictable isolation sets that generate zero leverage. The visual contrast was absolutely blinding. The paradigm has shifted, and the new board of directors has officially taken their seats at the head of the table. And get this, the bench unit came in and somehow made the carnage even worse. Rhyne Howard stepped onto that court with absolute psychopathic malice in her eyes and proceeded to execute what can only be described as an international war crime. 18 points on 60% shooting from three-point range. That's not just elite shooting. That's a systematic dismantling of another country's psychological resolve. She was operating like a trained sniper with zero conscience, punishing every microscopic rotational mistake New Zealand made. Meanwhile, Angel Reese was down in the paint, physically breaking grown women until they simply surrendered and accepted their fate. 9 points, 4 rebounds, and complete psychological domination in just 17 minutes of work. But wait, it gets worse. When you factor in Monique Billings going 5 for 7 from the floor and Kiki Iriafen shooting 66% while grabbing 8 rebounds, you're looking at the definition of market monopolization in athletic form. This wasn't a basketball team. This was a corporate liquidation squad systematically denying New Zealand the right to exist on the same competitive plane. Holding a professionally funded international team to 46 total points across 4 quarters isn't just good defense. It's psychological torture designed to make opponents question why they bothered showing up. It's the sporting equivalent of burning your competitors' crops and salting the earth so nothing can ever grow there again. Now here's the part that should terrify every WNBA owner and executive watching. This isn't just about winning games. This is about the upcoming collective bargaining negotiations, and Clark just demonstrated her market value on the biggest possible stage. Every time she pulls up off the dribble, she's actively negotiating her next 9-figure contract in real time. She's proving to multinational corporations and television networks that she's the sole proprietor of the viewership economy. The players are fighting for a massive slice of global broadcasting revenue, and Clark is the billion-dollar battering ram that's going to violently break down the doors of billionaire owners' boardrooms. The financial infrastructure of women's sports is about to permanently alter, and everyone knows exactly who's holding all the leverage. Listen to me very carefully. Caitlin Clark is the best point guard in the world right now, and the institutional refusal to acknowledge that reality is nothing short of clinical delusion. She's seamlessly distributing offensive wealth, keeping an incredibly talented roster happy, and delivering pinpoint transition passes that lead directly to highlight reel finishes. When you possess an asset this historically powerful, you don't put a restrictor plate on the engine to make obsolete models feel better. You take the brakes completely off, hand her the keys to the global franchise, and let her obliterate the competition without mercy or hesitation. The New Zealand game wasn't a basketball match. It was an official warning shot fired across the bow of every basketball federation on Earth. The polite grow-the-game era of women's basketball is dead and buried. We've entered the age of hostile takeovers, hyper-optimized efficiency, and ruthless production dictating the terms of engagement. Clark has weaponized her entire game, eliminated her perceived weaknesses, and surrounded herself with elite corporate partners. She's coming for every broadcast dollar, every championship trophy, and every ounce of institutional leverage in the global sports market. The old guard has exactly 2 choices: step aside and collect their pensions, or get completely run over by the unstoppable train of progress. There's no middle ground, no participation trophies, only the beautiful, unforgiving reality of elite sports economics. So here's the bottom line. That 101-46 annihilation wasn't a statistical anomaly. It was the establishment of a terrifying new baseline for what this team can accomplish when they finally unleash their true potential. The upcoming WNBA season is about to be absolute carnage, and the weak will be permanently liquidated and left behind. This is just the beginning of the most dominant era women's basketball has ever seen. What do you think happens next? Can anyone actually compete with this level of systematic destruction, or are we about to witness a decade of complete domination? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, smash that like button if this breakdown opened your eyes to what's really happening, and subscribe because the hostile takeover is just getting started. I'll see you in the next one. But here's what nobody saw coming in the aftermath of that massacre. While everyone was busy analyzing box scores and debating starting lineups, Clark was already 3 moves ahead, orchestrating the most calculated power grab in sports history. Because that demolition of New Zealand wasn't just about sending a message to international competition. It was about establishing undeniable leverage for what's about to become the most expensive free agency period women's basketball has ever witnessed. Think about the timing of this performance for just 1 second. We're less than 6 months away from Clark's rookie contract expiring, and she just delivered a masterclass in market manipulation that would make Wall Street executives weep with admiration. Every possession she controlled, every assist she delivered, every defensive rotation she orchestrated was simultaneously increasing her negotiating position by millions of dollars. She's not just playing basketball anymore. She's actively constructing a financial empire built on the foundation of pure, undeniable production. And here's where it gets absolutely diabolical. The WNBA salary structure that was designed to maintain competitive balance just became completely obsolete overnight. When you have one player who single-handedly generates more television revenue than entire franchises, the old economic model doesn't just break down. It gets violently shattered into 1,000 irreparable pieces. Clark is about to walk into contract negotiations with the nuclear option in her back pocket. She can literally point to viewership numbers, merchandise sales, and international broadcast deals that didn't exist before she arrived on the scene. But wait, there's another layer to this corporate chess match that most people are completely missing. That systematic destruction of New Zealand wasn't just about individual dominance. It was a live demonstration of what happens when you build an entire offensive ecosystem around one transcendent talent. Every player on that roster looked exponentially better when Clark was orchestrating the offense. That's not coincidence. That's market cornering at its most ruthless and effective. Paige Bueckers didn't just have a good game. She had the kind of performance that transforms role players into maximum contract candidates. When you're operating in Clark's gravitational field, every cut becomes more dangerous, every shot becomes more open, every defensive assignment becomes more manageable. She's not just elevating her own stock. She's creating a rising tide that lifts every boat in her vicinity. And smart agents are already calculating how much that proximity is worth in real dollars. Now let's examine what this means for the upcoming Olympic cycle. Because the international basketball community just received a very expensive education in American basketball supremacy. That 55-point margin of victory sent shockwaves through every training facility from Australia to Spain to France. National team coaches are frantically redesigning their entire offensive philosophies because the gap between elite American talent and international competition just widened to an unbridgeable chasm. But here's the truly terrifying part for international basketball federations. This isn't even close to Team USA's final form. Clark is still learning how to weaponize her teammates' specific skill sets. Bueckers is still integrating her decision-making with Clark's tempo preferences. The bench unit is still discovering optimal rotational chemistry. What you witnessed against New Zealand was approximately 60% of this team's actual ceiling, and they still delivered the most lopsided victory in recent international competition history. The ripple effects are already starting to materialize in ways that should make every basketball executive nervous. Ticket prices for USA basketball games just became non-negotiable premium entertainment. Television networks are frantically restructuring their broadcast budgets to secure exclusive rights to Clark's international appearances. Merchandise manufacturers are working around the clock to meet global demand for Team USA gear. This isn't just athletic success. This is the birth of a billion-dollar entertainment franchise built around one player's gravitational pull. And here's where the corporate politics get absolutely savage. Every WNBA franchise that passed on drafting complementary talent to surround Clark just watched their competitive window slam shut in real time. When you have the opportunity to build around a generational wealth generator and you choose to stick with outdated roster construction philosophies, you don't just miss out on championships. You forfeit your relevance in the marketplace entirely. The Indiana Fever front office is probably having emergency board meetings right now, calculating how much additional talent they need to acquire to maximize Clark's prime years. Because what that New Zealand game demonstrated is that when you surround elite talent with elite supporting pieces, the results aren't just additive. They're exponentially devastating to the competition. But let's talk about what this means for the immediate future of women's basketball economics. Clark just proved that international exhibitions can generate the same level of viewer engagement as playoff games. That fundamentally alters the revenue distribution model for USA basketball, the WNBA, and every television network with broadcast rights. When one player can single-handedly transform exhibition games into must-watch television events, traditional scheduling and marketing strategies become completely obsolete. The most brilliant part of Clark's strategic positioning is that she's simultaneously growing the entire market while consolidating her individual leverage within that expanded market. Every new fan who starts watching women's basketball because of her transcendent performances becomes a permanent asset in her negotiating portfolio. She's not just breaking records. She's creating new economic categories that didn't exist before her arrival. Here's what the old guard still refuses to acknowledge. Clark's impact extends far beyond statistical production and highlight reel plays. She's fundamentally altered the pace and rhythm at which elite women's basketball is played. That New Zealand massacre showcased a level of offensive tempo and decision-making speed that most professional teams can't even practice at, let alone execute in high-pressure situations. When Clark pushes the pace off defensive rebounds, she's not just looking for easy transition buckets. She's systematically breaking down opposing teams' defensive communication and rotational discipline. By the time defenders recognize what's happening and adjust their positioning, she's already identified the next weakness and moved on to exploiting it. That's not just basketball intelligence. That's predatory pattern recognition operating at superhuman frequencies. The international basketball community just learned a very expensive lesson about the difference between good players and market-altering superstars. Good players perform well within existing systems and frameworks. Market-altering superstars completely redefine what's possible within those frameworks and force everyone else to adapt or become irrelevant. Clark just announced to the world that she's operating in the latter category, and the adjustment period is going to be brutal for unprepared competitors.